The moment everything changed. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Like no matter what you did, you'd never be good enough? I have. My parents made sure of it. For years I tried to ignore it, told myself I was being dramatic, that every family had favorites, and that maybe, just maybe, I was overthinking it. But the truth was impossible to ignore. She got everything. The new clothes, while I wore her old, worn-out hand-me-downs. The big birthday parties, while mine were quiet family dinners, if they even remembered at all. The love, the praise, the endless attention. While I stood on the sidelines, watching, waiting, hoping that one day I'd be enough for them too. That day never came. I worked hard. Straight A's, scholarships, a good job. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I achieved enough they would finally see me, that I'd finally earn my place in their eyes. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Because in their world there was only one child that mattered. My sister. I told myself it didn't matter, that I would build my own life, away from them, that I didn't need their approval or validation. And for a while I believed it, until the day I found out the truth. A betrayal I never saw coming. My parents weren't rich, but they weren't struggling either. They had a house, savings, and a few investments. I never thought much about it. Until one day, completely by accident, I discovered the truth. I was at their house, helping my mom clean, when I saw a stack of legal documents on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop, but when I saw my sister's name all over the papers, my curiosity got the best of me. And that's when I saw it. The will. Everything. The house, the savings, the retirement funds, every last cent. All of it was going to my sister. My name wasn't even mentioned, not once. I felt my stomach drop. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages, hoping, praying that I was wrong, that there was some kind of mistake. But no. They had planned this all along. They had never intended for me to have anything. It wasn't just an oversight. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Deliberate. I thought back to all the years I spent trying to win their love, their approval, all the times I bent over backwards to prove that I was worthy. And all along, they had already made their decision. I was nothing to them. And in that moment, standing alone in that kitchen, holding the proof of their betrayal in my hands, I made a decision. They wouldn't get away with this. They thought they could erase me. They thought I would just accept it. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. The betrayal runs deeper. I stood in my parents' kitchen, gripping the wheel so tightly my hands shook. My name completely missing. Every single thing my parents owned. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was going to my sister. I felt my chest tighten. My entire life I had been second place. The forgotten child, the afterthought. But this was different. This wasn't just favoritism. This was them erasing me. I needed answers. Confrontation. That changed everything that evening. I called my parents and asked to meet. They didn't even sound concerned, just mildly annoyed, like I was interrupting their plans. I sat across from them at their dining table, my heart pounding. The will lay in the front of me. Undeniable proof of their betrayal. I found this today, I said, my voice even. Care to explain why my name isn't in it? My mom sighed, exchanging a look with my dad. That look. The same one they always had when they were about to dismiss me. Honey, my mom said, her tone condescending. You have a good job. You don't need the money. I clenched my fists. That's not the point. You left me out entirely, like I don't exist. My sister, sitting smugly across from me, finally spoke up. Come on, don't be so dramatic. Mom and Dad just want what's fair. And let's be real, you've always been fine on your own. Fair. Fair! I felt something snap inside me. This isn't about fairness, I shot back. This is about you taking everything while I get nothing. Did you even know about this, or was it a surprise for you two? She just smirked. Oh, she knew. I turned back to my parents. So that's it? You raised 2 kids and you decided only one of them mattered? My dad finally spoke. His voice was calm, dismissive. We just thought it was best. Your sister will need the house one day. You're independent. You'll be fine. I'll be fine? That was their excuse? I felt my blood boil, and they had made their choice. Now I was going to make mine. A hidden truth. No one was supposed to know. That night I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned. my mind replaying the conversation over and over, the way they had dismissed me like I was nothing. But something wasn't sitting right with me. Why did they make the will so many years ago? Why did they never tell me? I needed to know more. The next morning I reached out to an old family friend, our former lawyer, Mr. Reynolds. He had retired a few years back, but I remembered how he used to handle all of my parents' legal matters. When I asked him about the will, he hesitated. I can't say much, he admitted, but I will tell you this. Things changed when your uncle passed away. That's when they finalized everything. My uncle. I hadn't thought about him in years. He had always been kind to me, unlike my parents. Before he died, he used to tell me, "You deserve the world, kid. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And suddenly I remembered something. A long time ago, when I was just a teenager, he had pulled me aside during a family gathering. He had mentioned something about making sure I was taken care of. Could it be? I had to find out, digging deeper and finding the lie. I went back to my parents' house under the pretense of picking up some old things. While my mom was out and my dad was in his office, I sneaked into their study. I started going through the drawers, looking for anything related to my uncle's estate. And then I found it. A second will, one that had been hidden. My hands trembled as I opened it. My uncle had left me something, a substantial amount of money, enough to change my life, enough to give me independence. But my parents, they had kept it from me. They had funneled it into my sister's inheritance instead. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This was theft. And I was going to make them pay. The plan for revenge. I spent the next few days gathering everything I needed. Copies of both wills, bank statements, evidence that my parents had redirected what was supposed to be mine. But I didn't just want my money back. I wanted them to feel what it was like to be cast aside. So I did what they never expected. I hired a lawyer. A damn good one. I filed a case against them demanding my rightful inheritance. But that wasn't all. I leaked the truth to extended family, to their friends, to the community they prided themselves on being a part of. My parents had built their entire reputation on being good, loving people. But now everyone saw them for what they really were. Liars, thieves, hypocrites. As for my sister, she wasn't as confident when people started questioning her about the stolen money. She had been gloating, thinking she had won. But when the lawsuit hit, she panicked. I made sure everyone knew. She'd been in on it all along, and when she realized she might actually lose everything, she turned on them. The tables have turned. The legal battle was messy, but I was relentless. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for justice. And in the end, I won. The court ruled in my favor, and my parents were forced to pay me back, every single cent they had taken from me. But the real victory? Watching them squirm as they lost everything. Their reputation, their dignity, their golden child's trust. For the first time in their lives, they knew what it felt like to be discarded. And let me tell you, it felt damn good. The final blow. When revenge becomes reality. The day my lawsuit became public, my parents' world began to crumble. At first, they acted like it was a misunderstanding. "This is a family matter," my mother told people, her voice shaking. "We'll handle it privately." But there was nothing private about what I did next. I made sure everyone knew. The shame they never expected. My parents had spent their entire lives crafting an image of a perfect, respectable family. Church-going, well-mannered, and generous to a fault. That was their biggest weakness. So, I exposed them. I leaked everything. The hidden will, the stolen inheritance, even the text messages where my sister mocked me for thinking I was ever part of this family. It spread like wildfire. Neighbors whispered. Friends distanced themselves. My parents went from being admired to being pitied. But the best part, their beloved golden child, my sister, turned on them the second things got tough. Blood is not always thicker than money. At first, she tried to play innocent. "I had no idea Mom and Dad did this," she cried to our relatives. "I thought my brother and sister was just being dramatic." But when the lawsuit got serious, when she realized she might actually lose everything, she flipped. She blamed them. Told the court it was their idea, that she never wanted to be a part of it, that she would gladly give up the inheritance if it meant clearing her name. She thought she could save herself. But it was too late. I still remember the look on my parents' face when she testified against them. Pure betrayal. The very child they gave everything to had just thrown them under the bus to save herself. For the first time, they felt what I had felt my entire life, being discarded. The verdict that changed everything. The judge didn't take long to decide. The evidence was clear. My parents stole from me. They had actively worked to cut me out of what was rightfully mine. The court sided with me. My sister? She was forced to give up a huge chunk of her inheritance. The house was sold to pay me back. My parents? They were financially ruined. It didn't hit them right away. I could see it in their faces as they left the courtroom, still in shock. They had always believed they would win, that they could talk their way out of anything. But this time, there was no escape. The collapse of a family. The fallout was even worse than I expected. My parents had no savings left. They had poured everything into my sister, assuming she would take care of them one day. But now, she wanted nothing to do with them. She moved away, cut off all contact, and pretended they didn't exist. I heard through distant relatives that my parents had to sell their cars, downgrade to a tiny apartment, and live off government assistance. The family name they once wore with pride was now a joke. And for the first time, they were the ones being ignored. A final goodbye, or not. Months later, I got a message from my mom, a short, pathetic plea. "We miss you. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Miss me? The people who spent their entire lives making me feel invisible, who stole from me, who betrayed me. I laughed, but then something inside me said, go see them just once. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I wanted to see what rock bottom looked like. The last conversation. I agreed to meet them at a coffee shop. When I walked in, they looked old, tired, beaten down, nothing like the proud, confident people they used to be. For the first time in my life, they were the ones desperate for my attention. I sat down, folded my arms, waited. My mom's eyes filled with tears. "We made a mistake," she whispered. "We should have treated you better." I raised an eyebrow. Should have? Not we're sorry? My dad sighed. "Look, we were in a tough spot. Your sister abandoned us. We thought she would take care of us, but—" I held up a hand. There it was. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry for what they lost. They didn't want me back because they loved me. They wanted me back because they needed me. For money, for survival, for someone to clean up the mess they created. I leaned forward, smiling sweetly. You know, I really did spend years wishing I had a family that cared about me. Hope flashed in my mom's eyes. "We do care about you." I laughed. "No, you don't. But thanks for pretending." Then I stood up, tossed a few dollars on the table for my coffee, and walked away, forever. The end of the story, and the beginning of my freedom. The final moment of satisfaction didn't come in the courtroom, it came later. Weeks after the trial, when the dust had settled and my family was nothing more than a scandal whispered about behind closed doors, I found myself standing in front of my parents' old house. Well, what used to be their house. It had been sold to cover their debts. The new owners had already repainted the walls, removed every trace of my childhood. It was as if my family had never lived there, just like they had tried to erase me. Now they were the ones erased. The ultimate fall from grace. I heard my parents were struggling to get by. No more fancy dinners, no more lavish spending on my sister. They had bet everything on her, and she had abandoned them the moment things went south. She moved to another city, distancing herself from the scandal. I heard she lost friends, job opportunities, and even a long-term relationship. No one wanted to be associated with someone who stole from their own sibling. And my parents, they tried to reach out. They sent emails, letters, even had distant relatives contact me. But I never responded. They didn't deserve closure. They didn't deserve me. Was it enough? For years I'd imagined different ways this could end. Would they beg for forgiveness? Would they admit they were wrong? Would they fall to their knees, crying, finally realizing how badly they had treated me? The truth was, it didn't matter anymore. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need revenge. Because I had won. I got my inheritance. I got my justice. And most importantly, I got my freedom. The weight of their betrayal was finally gone. I was no longer the forgotten child, the afterthought, the one who was always left behind. I had built my own life, one that had nothing to do with them, and that was the greatest revenge of all. I spent my whole life chasing love from people who never saw me as enough. I bent over backward, tried to make them proud, tried to be the good child. But in the end, it was never about me, because some people will never love you the way you deserve. Some people will take and take until there's nothing left of you. But here's the thing. You don't have to let them. You don't owe loyalty to people who only see you as an option. You don't have to keep proving yourself to those who have already decided you'll never be enough. Walk away. Cut them off. Build a life where you're finally free. And when they realize they've lost you, that's when they'll regret it. So tell me, have you ever walked away from a toxic family or friendship? Do you think blood always comes first? Or do we get to choose our real family?